good?
Go for it.
All right, it's Monday, May 2nd, 2022. Calling the City of Rollingwood Park Commission meeting to order. Let's do a roll call. I'm Chad Smith, present.
John Hudson, present.
Jennifer Meyer, present.
Melissa Morrow, present.
Nicole Marisi, present.
Laurie Mills, present.
And we possibly have Mary Elizabeth via Zoom. First off, we will do public comments. Does that work? Citizens wishing to address the Park Commission for items not on the agenda will be received at this time. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, the Park Commission is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Citizens who wish to address the Park Commission with regard to matters on the agenda will be received at this time. Doesn't sound like we have anybody. All right. Discussion and possible action on the minutes from the March 7th, 2022 Park Commission meeting. Does anybody have any discussion on those minutes?
Motion to approve?
I'll second
Seconded.
that.
All right. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Approved. All right.
Chad, can we go back to public comments real quick? Do you
Yes,
want me to
ma'am.
call me back? I just want to introduce our new employee. I guess I just realized y'all probably all met her before
Now
the
would be a
meeting.
great time for
but
that.
this is a great time to do it.
Yeah.
Desiree Adair joined us a couple weeks ago now as our city secretary, so she'll be here for all of our meetings. So just say hello if you haven't already. But wanted to introduce her. We're excited to have her with us. So
Welcome, Desiree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we're on to regular agenda. Item number 3, update from Western Hills Little League and Western Hills Girls Softball. Steve, do you have anything?
I guess briefly, season's winding down. I think, softball's got 2 weeks left, so Little League, I think
We're
it's
about
about the
finished.
same, but
Yeah, 2 weeks.
at least from what I know, I don't think we're gonna have any all-star teams from softball. I don't know if you guys are gonna have any all-city teams or yet or not.
For Little League, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we'll have 10-year-old, and they'll probably be practicing on Hatley 1.
Yeah, so they'll have some practices after the season ends, but I don't think softball will, so we'll be kind of wrapped up from that perspective. So I don't know if, we did have a couple weeks ago, I guess it was a little over a week ago, we did do like a little get together in the park. We had food trucks up there, and it seemed like the kids really enjoyed that and everything went well. So I think we're looking to maybe do that maybe once a year or so, kind of, we called it kind of Western Hills Day in the Park kind of thing. I
You had the
believe,
mayor throw out the first pitch?
yeah, he threw a pitch out for us. It was definitely warmer than the day we canceled, so he was happy to be out there in flip-flops and shorts, so.
Nice.
But I don't know, I had heard kind of through the grapevine that Jess Butler had some issues with the generator right across from his house, so we will be improving that going forward. I don't know if he filed anything with you or not. Yeah. But yeah, I think at least, so one of our board members, Julie Shaw, lives like right next to him, so she had talked to him, and that's kind of how I found out. And he was more concerned that it'd be going on every weekend. We'd have a food truck there, and that's definitely not the case. It was just a one-time deal kind of thing. So
So he had a generator that didn't work because of the food truck?
no, the food truck had a generator, and he was complaining that it was too loud coming across, and they were running it all day. So he went out a few times and complained that it was too loud. So we'll work on that. I think it's a good location to have the trucks in that little small lot by the swim center, because it's taken to the back. It's dangerous because you know how narrow it gets getting in and out of the back, and then we didn't want to put them here, but we'll discuss that of what the location is. And I know there's different things to do to kind of, I think they have some. It's not fully soundproofing, but like some walls you can put around generators that can kind of help or whatever. So we'll live and learn and make it better for next year.
I heard positive feedback from 10 or 12 different people that said they were really excited about it and thought it was great, so.
I thought it was great. I mean, I didn't go by, but I live on a Longwood Drive, so I've passed it many times. I thought it was great to see all the people out there. It felt like a well-utilized community event. I mean, I was happy to see it.
Yeah, and it had been mentioned, and it's nothing official, but one or two community members have broached the subject of doing like just a coffee setup or something.
That's right.
Up there. So there'd be no generator or anything like that, but that's just in discussions. So if we did anything, it would be much smaller in scale or whatever. If, you know, once again, just having something for the parents and community members to go up there on the weekend.
Are you resuscitating milk and cookies?
Yeah. That's kind of what
That wasn't me. It was brought to me from a community member. Yeah, so it'd just be like they said it would just be a table or something. I was like, all right, you got to figure that
I
one
don't
out
know
with the
that
city.
we want like a lemonade stand every weekend there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was a great event.
What, do y'all utilize the concession stand?
No.
We haven't since COVID. That's not saying we won't go back to it, but it's kind of changed forms. You know, the city, you know, has taken over, and there's a lot of supplies in there that the city keeps right in there. So we'd have to really clean it up and do some things. It was, I mean, it was okay, but it was more of a headache than anything, just because to find volunteers to run it, and it was not a whole bunch of money because we don't do the things like Kona Ice and some of the big things the kids want. And we have candy, that's it, kind of thing. So I'd be more interested in just doing this once or twice a year, kind of, you know, once a season or something. And, you know, we could probably open it up, but much smaller in scale, kind of concession stand. But I'm receptive because I think it's you know, somebody from RCDC or whatever that's talking about, you know, doing some stuff up in the park or whatever to drive more activity, I guess.
It seems like it'd be pretty non-controversial to use the concession stand for anything going forward because it was already approved and it's there. And kind of, and so if we need
I
to talk to
completely
the
agree.
city about
I agree.
moving that stuff out and finding another shed or something like that, I think that's totally worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just the safety with the precautions of the COVID and, you know,
Right, yeah.
but yeah, as we keep going through this process, you know, we're definitely up for talking about it. Then it's just, you know, what do we put in there? What do we do? But like I said, yeah, I don't know if we'd ever get, you know, evidently Kona Ice, like they make a fortune up there. I mean, the kids were lined up
Yeah.
tenfold doing shaved ice stuff. So that's something we don't have in there. So, I mean, we make a little bit of money. So we'd be receptive to talking about what makes the most sense, you know.
I see them every time we go to Oak Hill Little League or Northwest or whatever, so
Yeah.
interesting.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, please, Alec. Real quick, while Alec's getting up there, Mary Elizabeth, I see you on the Zoom meeting. Do you want to introduce yourself and announce your presence?
She's frozen.
She's frozen, she's muted.
Well, let's just
And
say,
Ron.
Yeah, she left.
let's just say,
Way to call her
she
out,
may or may
Ted.
not be zooming in right now. For the record.
She just wanted to watch.
Yes, apparently.
Alec Robinson, 4818 Rollingwood Drive. I just wanted to add a couple more comments about the food truck thing. I think one, communication, I think we had known, because I live kind of by that too.
Yeah.
If I'd known a little bit ahead of time, it wouldn't have been so like surprising of like woke up at 7 a.m. and it was a
Turkey
loud
legs.
generator like right across the street. So I think Jess had it the worst for sure. And one of the other things, I think they got there very early, is my understanding, like while it was still dark out, and headlights in his front window. I think that was a little bit upsetting to him.
Okay.
Those are just comments. The other thing was, I noticed that they had big staff, like a lot of cars that they parked in all those parking spaces right there by field too. Just
What would be the best way for us
don't
to
know.
notify? Because I know we reached out to
Maybe
you
a
know,
little
the
sign right in
website.
front. There's a sign that for something that just happened. Maybe it was a Rolling One Women's sign,
Oh,
something
yeah.
like
It was
like
Rolling
right
Wood
there.
Women's Club meeting
Yeah.
tonight. It looks like a for sale sign, but they put different signage in there, and it says Rolling Wood Women's Club tonight to let people know.
And where is that sign?
It's just like a sign you put in a yard like you would a for sale sign.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Marnie keeps it. She's the president, and she just puts it out when it's time. Is that
Okay.
the way that
And
works?
that's right
Ashley?
across from Jess's house too, so I'm sure he would see
Yeah.
that. and
Would that be the best way to?
I mean, I think
I mean, it seems like you and a couple other houses would be the primary ones to notify. So if you're not
yeah. I
checking
mean,
the
I didn't
website,
like. I
which
couldn't hear the
just put a
generator
flyer
inside
in
my
their
house because I'm like 3 or 4 houses down, so it was okay. But
Yeah.
you could hear it from the front yard. But I could imagine Jess could. It was like 100 feet from his house, so I can see that. But maybe a box around it, like was mentioned before, some soundproofing, and then.
But because it is something different, a little bigger, we do have some protocols that the city has put in place before for like the fun run and for movie nights and things like that. And it basically kind of puts it on the onus of the organization to inform the people within that block and just say, hey, this week, and literally you just tape a flyer to the outside of the mailboxes just for that block.
Yeah.
But also to make sure that the police know, so that if they need to have extra,
yeah, we alerted the police. They
Perfect.
appreciated it.
Yeah.
So we did that.
Yeah.
But I'm just, what's the best, most efficient way to notify people like you?
Yeah,
So
like
you're
there's
not
a sign or
surprised
like
at
yeah,
7 a.m.
or just an email from the city maybe. Hey, this
Okay.
is what's going on. We got the Western Hills Athletic. They're having
Yeah.
a fun weekend with some food trucks and stuff.
Okay.
Just
And
noted.
Western Hills League does that in the city of Austin. Y'all used to have I don't know if it was an opening day thing, and then you'd have like bouncy houses and the Kona ice truck and a couple other things. And
Mhm.
all we had to do, we just had to tell the city of Austin, and they informed like Austin Pets Alive, any of our neighbors that was going to
Yeah.
happen.
Okay.
So that's it.
We could do definitely a better job of doing that.
Cool.
That's what I'm hearing. We could do that for sure. Sorry about that. We didn't quite.
Is there a way you could turn the truck too, so it faced this
When the
direction,
truck
and that way
is-
the generator went to the fields and not to the residences?
Yeah, it wasn't the truck, I think it was, yeah, I mean, we could.
I wasn't there. I don't know.
I mean, like I said, I think if the solution would be to try to get some of those, I've seen them
Soundproofing.
at the tailgate parties at
Yeah.
games or whatever, you can get kind of enclosed walls around it, and then it makes the sound go up
Up.
rather than to the side or whatever.
There are also some real quiet generators. I see them at
Yeah,
Zilker
the
Park
Hondas
running
are-
these musicians' rigs, and
Yeah.
you can hardly hear them. I don't know if they're strong enough for a food truck, but
All right. Well, we don't want to discourage you from doing that. Maybe we can tweak it next time.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. I want to hit number 6 next on the regular agenda if we can, and drop down, and then we'll hit 4 and 5 last. Discussion and possible action regarding a quote for park security cameras.
I have
Um,
some questions.
Yeah, you bet. On 6?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
What is the actual purpose of the security cameras? Is it surveillance, active surveillance? Is it after the fact, figure out who did something graffiti-wise or
Mhm.
something? Is it deterrence? Or is it curiosity about everybody's conversations and what they do? in the
Yeah,
park?
you bet. Do you want me to hit it?
Sure.
Okay. I think the purpose is, one, to assist the police in being able to keep an eye on the park at all time. Deterrence, you hit on, would be awesome. Just to let everybody know in the neighborhood that there are a set of eyes on the park at all times. And then if we do have an incident or a graffiti or something like that, we can go back and roll the tape and find some evidence for who did it. It's pretty easy to, because of that bottleneck of getting in from Rollingwood Drive, for anybody who brings a car through there, to have a camera that picks up who that car is that entered at 10:30 p.m. on Friday night, and then go from there. So that was my thought. Was there anything else from you, Nicole?
We did. We met with Chief Brady, and he said a lot of times on patrol that they'll have to take a car and go down where Chad is mentioning, and then that takes them from surveilling and being on patrol within the residential area or the commercial district. And so they would be alerted if there was a car coming down there, and then it would tie into the current system that they are using right now with what's on the field house, or not the field house, but one of the, I think, Field 2, as well as City Hall here. They do have current cameras. And so the idea here is just to really take a burden off of them from having to actually go there. If it's on their route and they don't see a car there via the camera, then they know that they can go patrol somewhere else. They also get alerted if there's a car there that's not supposed to be there, and then they could send somebody out there or to investigate it. And then it's also for community awareness to say, we are under surveillance simply because we're protecting our biggest asset here in the community, and we want to, make people aware of that, and then to work together as a community to be able to try and bring some, an added layer of protection for the police as well as for the residents.
And would it be picking up sound or just visual?
My understanding
I know
it's
you were
Yeah, I'm
worried
very
about
curious about that,
conversation,
because
so
if somebody walks, like, you're walking with somebody, does your conversation get recorded and kept for 6 months?
It's my understanding that no, it's not.
Because I know that the
Audio.
one that is currently at the park supposedly has sound.
And our thinking was if, 48 hours passes and there's no incident or whatever reported, that it would be wiped clear. And the thinking there is it's expensive to hold on to that stuff. That's kind of how the security companies charge you, is by how long that stuff gets retained. And our thinking was if 48 hours goes by and there wasn't an incident reported, that we just clear that footage.
Is there planning to have active monitoring of this? And if so, who does it?
There's already active monitoring going on in the police station of all the cameras
So
that
there'll
are
be
existing.
somebody staffing those cameras 24 hours a day?
I don't know that it's 24 hours a day, but it's, they can have eyes on anywhere that's public land, is the thinking.
Okay. I had a couple more questions, sorry. So you're saying 48 hour storage, unsure about sound, but probably sound, because the current one has sound?
I guess.
Okay.
I can't remember.
I'm reading the invoice right now, so that's what I'm glancing
Yeah,
over
it
here.
doesn't say what it records, and I looked it up online, and they don't describe, is it audio and visual? And I suspect that they would have said it was one or the other if it was only one or the other. Because I think it's very intrusive to hold sound recordings of people.
It says it's compatible with the vigilant recorders. I didn't think that we had a quote that included recorders.
Well, you're recording, if it's storing for 48 hours, it's recording.
Recording
Visual,
is
not
my
necessarily
understanding.
audio.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something I would really appreciate clarification on, because if you're recording people's conversations, that's incredibly intrusive.
I don't see any reason to record anybody's conversations.
I know. So the question
I don't
is,
think that's our
is that
motivation
something
there.
that will be automatically recorded?
where are the current cameras that record?
There's one on a pole between Hatley's 1 and 2.
There's one on the top of Field 2's backstop, that pans back onto kind of Field 1 and the playscape area. And that's something that the police can monitor already.
Right, but that's so high up it wouldn't. It doesn't register.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wouldn't register, so it's not really recording your
I mean,
conversation.
Chief Brady said they could listen if they needed to.
Yeah.
When I spoke to him, cause I never noticed it went up, and then we were doing the sunshades, and that's when I noticed it, like, oh, there's a camera up there now, and, when I had spoke to him about potentially moving it or whatever, he had mentioned that they had put it up, I think, to at least, at times when it went up, there had been some altercations in the park or whatever, and so they did want to have sound to be able to go back and listen to that altercation if it happened or whatever.
That
Was
raises
this
another
during
question.
COVID?
Yes.
Yes.
That raises another question. If the purpose is deterrence, everybody in the city needs to know they're there and where they are.
Sure.
Correct.
So
And
they've
there
gotta
would,
be obvious, and they've gotta be labeled so people have a clue that they're being watched.
correct.
That
And,
would be the
Yeah,
idea.
like the one that's there now, people don't know that. I mean,
and that's what
seriously.
Chief Brady had said. He said wherever the cameras would be located, there would be one of those signs that says, you know, you're under surveillance,
Mhm.
notifying people that, and then be able to communicate that and actually partner with the residents here to say, you know, we're here to, it's like the neighborhood watch program that we grew up
Mhm.
with back in the 70s, right? So everybody's here to help one another and not to, you know, pretend that that's an end all be all for our police, you know, as far as monitoring, but it would be an added layer of protection and awareness for residents, as well as a lot of people who don't live here. You know, our parks get used by a lot of folks that are outside of Rolling Woods city limits. And it's just an added layer of protection so that when we do have visitors or guests coming through, that they are aware that, you know, you are under surveillance, and please be mindful of what you're doing and what you know, kind of activities you're engaging in.
So if the ones on the field already went up, why are we involved in this one? Is this, like, can't the police just put them up?
Well, the system that they did was more of a trial system. It's not a very robust or accurate system of what they have because it spans and it rotates. And so when we met with the consultant who provided the quote for us, he suggested having fixed cameras that would just go in a certain degree of visibility, because when you start to, the camera that's up there, it rotates. And so it doesn't, if something's happening on field 2 and it happens to be on field 1, you're not going to see what's going on. And so this proposal was to have fixed cameras in specific locations that you could get to the back gravel parking lot off the field house. You could get coverage of fields 1 and 2, and then you could also get the parking lot, the upper parking lot, and the playscape area. So you're getting the largest percentage of people that are coming in to use the parks. Those are the locations. And then right by the entrance of the restrooms, because there's been some vandalism with the toilets and things in there. So that was capturing the most amount of people coming in and out of the park, where those locations is what I recall that he had discussed with us.
And do you have that bid in front of you? How much was it?
I do. It's $6,498.90.
Okay.
And that did not include the Wi-Fi connectivity, because that's the other component that has to, they have Wi-Fi that they're tapping in from City Hall right now to use the one that's up there, but it would need a stronger signal to be able to have that, to operate those. I think it was 5 different cameras.
And would there be an ongoing fee?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
A monitoring fee,
Yeah.
that would be my guess, is that there would be a monitor, and it's all based on storage as well, I believe, so that the more history you store, the larger the subscription is.
Okay.
And is this out of our budget or police budget, or?
Well, that would be the conversation, is possibly see if city council could find this as an exemplary item or an extraordinary item off of the park commission budget, or possibly look to see if the police has a line item in there for enhanced security. So those are a lot of the questions of the discussion that we're wanting to have with y'all. Don, did you have a question?
I do. So have there been a lot of incidents? I heard about the bathrooms, somebody messing with the bathroom, but have there been other vandalism or fights, or is this an ongoing problem that we're trying to solve? Or is it future prevention? I mean, have we had?
I know we had
incidents?
vandalism on one. I know we had vandalism. Graffiti was put on one of the electrical boxes up there. We've had the toilet issue. I'm trying to remember what Chief Brady had also mentioned to us as far as other infractions and kind of destruction of property. Vicky's nodding her head. I'm guessing you've run across a few things.
Somebody keeps going in there and tagging it. They actually added to their artwork over the weekend. So there's even more.
Where is the tagging
In the
happening?
men's room stall.
Oh, in the men's room.
I got it off of the toilet paper dispenser. We're gonna try goo off or something on the actual panel, but if we can't get it off, might have to order a new one. So,
Can you paint
Is-
over it?
We lock those restrooms at night, right?
the police department does. Public Works opens them.
Okay, so like from 9 to 7, they're locked. 9 at night till 7, are they locked?
Closing hours, dusk till dawn is pretty
Okay,
much the
Okay.
verbiage, but yes, at night we don't, the police department takes control of that.
Okay. I had a question about the dollars per month to monitor it, but
Mhm.
that's an unknown. I think as I hear about this, it's a lot of money and it's a monthly fee, and I have to ask if, would that money be better spent maintaining our landscape or reseeding some of the grassy areas?
I agree with that, because just walking down the steps right out in front of the city hall, we have a weed problem, a big weed problem going on out there. And it's not looking very attractive at the moment, and it's such a beautifully landscaped area that I know you don't have enough time, Vicki, to do, it's like, we have to have somebody help with the landscape.
That's a
Yep.
whole nother discussion. There's a lot that needs to be done, and obviously Vicky and
Right,
her team
but
can't
I
do
mean,
it, but
$6,500.
Melissa and I did a walkthrough,
We
and,
have a
I mean,
limited budget.
Yeah.
there's a lot.
There's a lot,
There's a
and-
lot to be done, there's a lot that needs to be done, and it can't be done by just Vicky.
So is
But that's a
is
whole nother
graffiti prevention
conversation.
worth taking away from landscape maintenance?
Well, I don't think it's an if or, but I really don't like the fact that people are vandalizing our property. I'm not for cameras everywhere watching you all the time either. I don't know what the happy medium is, but we can't just let people continue to do this, and we don't have enough of a police department for them to park outside the bathrooms. I don't know what the right answer is, but, I don't know.
I think part of the motivation on this was Rolling Woods growing, and we're trying to be ahead of it somewhat, and we have the opportunity to put up some more security cameras for what I think is a fairly nominal amount. And the question is, do we want them? And if so, do we want to ask the police department to pay for that? Do we want the Parks Commission to try and pull that out of our budget? Or do we not care enough and we don't want to move forward with cameras?
It's not a not care enough,
Is it appropriate?
it's, to me, it's, if it were every week, several a week, and it was but this seems like this is a fairly infrequent incident. Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, it's not 10 and 20 incidents, it's 1 or 2.
I think it's more of a question for Chief Brady to see how many reports he's had and how many of his police officers have to go and assess a situation or the aftermath to learn about it on a Monday morning after the weekend has come and City Hall is closed. We don't have Public Works here. And so I think that's more of a fact-based. It's hard for me to estimate based off of, not having the tangibles in the... Melissa?
So I was just gonna say, in that funny way that things keep happening that way and then happening here, we did install cameras, just in January, in our main lobby, our hallways, and our back doors. Obviously for safety and security, we run a preschool there also, but, it is not to be entered into lightly. And there's actually a lot of laws about, when you take people. One of the things that we found out early on, only after we purchased it, was that yes, it has sound capability, but the state of Texas has a very high bar for informing people that they're being tape recorded or monitored. And so I do think as soon as possible we should get something up near the cameras that we have existing and let people know that, because I would hate for even if it's a parent and child having a private conversation and not knowing that
Right.
they're being recorded.
Sure.
If that's against the
yeah.
law, we're putting ourselves at
Right.
risk of a lawsuit and losing.
So there's that. We found that it's super helpful in the case that you only have, and I can sort of apply it to the police department. You only have 2 guys on duty. It's 11 o'clock at night. Somebody just called and said there's some people in the park that you can quickly look on there, but there is no substitute for physically being there, because in the end, even though our cameras have a great amount of visibility, it's still at a distance, or if it's dark or anything, or if somebody has a hoodie on, it's very difficult to actually identify people in those. And so from the kind of distances that we're talking about outside. And so it would be, in my mind, it's not a 100% foolproof, keep vandalism from happening. And I can tell you right now, even with kids knowing it's in there, they still go smoke pot in the bathroom, and they still graffiti and throw massive amounts of toilet paper into a bowl and make it overflow, because you cannot have them in bathrooms. You also have, there's laws about HR, human resources. You have to make sure that all of your employees understand that they will not be monitored for their breaks, or for, it's not trying to catch them doing bad things. So it's not an easy quick fix. It's definitely something that you have to think about. You also need to form a committee, so that it's not that if Alex just calls over to the police department and says, hey, I'd like to go review that tape, that he can just go do that. Even though he's a council member, he doesn't have the right to do that. You actually form a security committee, and it's based on that these tapes are just going to be used for security purposes, and that anyone who requests them has to do so through, because a crime has been committed, or through judicial request for those tapes. It was unbelievable how quickly it spiraled out of control, where all of a sudden we had 2 and 3 staff members having to review hours of tape to find incidents that came up. And then suddenly other people are now having their lawyers contact us and ask for the tapes. And so I just want to say that as much as it can be a tool, it can also be an added headache for the staff, and a really high expectation from the community that it's going to solve the problem, that any graffiti artist who goes in there will be caught. And now my son and his friends were actually down playing baseball on Saturday night, and I am going to ask them if they did that graffiti. No, I know, but it's, I know that middle schoolers and high schoolers, they love to go over there, and bless their hearts, the more of them there are, the stupider they get. And so I totally want us to think about that, but like I said, there's nothing like having a police officer. If those kids know that every half hour there's gonna be a police officer drive through there, that is a huge deterrence. They tend to ignore, those cameras are all over their schools, and they still do stupid things. So in fact, some of them promote some of the stupid videos that they make of themselves. So just a lot to think about. I wouldn't want to jump into it too fast, but I do see its value both as a tool, but also we have to manage people's expectations about what it could bring.
I think if kids knew that, one, it's illegal to be over there at dark, and 2, if they go in there, there is a camera, and the policeman could see them go in there and go over there, instead of a policeman coming twice an evening, and a policeman can be sitting somewhere else and go, oh, kid's going into the park, I'm gonna go over there. Just more efficient. So that was the idea.
The signs are the most efficient.
Yeah, no.
And that's what we
I
have
agree.
the camera up. I think you plaster those signs everywhere, so kids don't even know where they are, and because they're not going to watch this meeting, I can tell you right now.
So I guess, do you want to put it to a vote or make a motion on this one?
So is this something that if we vote on it still has to go to council and be approved, or how does this work for something like this?
At this point, it would still need to be allocated for in the budget, and we'd probably need the quotes that would include ongoing maintenance. The budget process is about to start, so that would be a time to have all of that together for the budget that begins in October. So I think if everything was together and the Park Commission made that recommendation during the budget process, the council could act on it at that point. But I would say yes, it would need to get final approval through them. But I don't think before the budget year, because we haven't allocated funds for those new cameras.
So if we want to do this, we need to suggest that the bids be finalized and then presented to the city council as an option to be included in the budget.
Yes.
One other thing, we did, the one that we used we didn't want to have a monthly fee. And it looked like from that bid, they have a hard drive that it's going to be saved on. And so the way that ours works is we don't have a monthly fee. You basically set it up, and then they told us that we had up to 90 days. Ours actually filled up so fast that we only have 2 weeks of held data. But you do, and if you need something from those 2 weeks, you have to go in, save it separately. But I do believe there's non-monthly.
Yeah, I don't think that this was a monthly commitment. I think that this stores on the hard drive, and that's why there was no monthly monitoring fee associated with this, like a home alarm company per se, because you have the hard drive storage capability. And depending on how much you want to, if you are setting it to motion sensor and you're recording, I think it's 3 seconds before the motion takes place and up to 30 seconds afterwards, then that depends on how big your hard drive is to determine if you can keep it for 1 day or a month as far as your memory on the hard drive.
And how many, the 6400 is how many cameras?
5 cameras, I believe. Let me double check that real quick.
And if I remember correctly, Chief Brady said they had room on their television monitors for another 5 cameras, and he was encouraging us to do it. So,
There's also the cost of getting the video signal to the City Hall, Police Headquarters. So my understanding is there is a line that connects those, but it doesn't have the bandwidth to handle video like we're talking about.
Correct. We currently have Wi-Fi there that's coming off of City Hall that's working that camera that's existing right now. But this signal is not strong enough for it to get all the way over to the back gravel lot, which is the big area that, wanting to get 3, 4, and 5 in that back gravel lot, as well as the front 2 fields, and then as well as the playscape right above the restroom facilities and the upper parking lot. So that's the scope of where the cameras would be able to capture. And again, the current system we have is it's a rotating camera, so you're not able to get a stationary picture of one particular area, which is why he suggested to go to the stationary cameras that have the projectile to be able to do that.
Was there a camera for down below?
There is one,
Yeah,
and it's
there are
off of
cameras
this
down
building.
below.
Correct.
Good to know. That's
yeah,
all
there's
we need.
probably 10 different camera angles they're already paying attention to, and this would add another 5, I think.
And at least ours, it has an app that comes with it.
Exactly.
And so you can give that to all of your staff people, and so they can, but again, that means you have a lot of people watching other people, which can feel uncomfortable for some citizens. So
Our thought was
I
just
do
to
think
leave
we're
it up
gonna-
to the police officers.
Right.
And not have anybody inside of City of Rollingwood monitoring anything, just for that exact reason.
To use his discretion as to who he felt
Yeah.
would have access to it. Because originally he said, I want this to be for every resident to be able to see, because but again, he's very passionate about this simply and I don't want to speak for him. We should have invited him to come and answer questions for y'all today. He really felt that this was a step in the right direction to give them an added layer of just communication, protection, knowing what's going on when they can't have their guys or their police officers in the field at the particular location. It just gives them an extra set of eyes, sort of like the baby monitor you have in your infant's room when you bring them home from the hospital, right? You can't live in their room 24/7, but you want to know what's going on if you have the opportunity to.
Did they talk about having ones on Bee Caves Road? Like, I mean, because I know that's one of the things that the police get called the most on is accidents on Bee Caves Road. I mean, honestly, it would be helpful to have the chief come and tell us, like, how much of this is a time save for you? Because I do feel like it should be a police. I'm much more comfortable with the police and the council deciding this than the parks. It feels a little, to me, I'm just saying, to me, because I do, I want them to use it wisely. Sorry.
Yeah, so Alec Robinson, 4818 Rollingwood Drive. I just wanted to kind of let you guys know where I'm kind of thinking about this. I mean, I'm not a big camera person, I'll just say it, but I can understand why the police would want this. I can see how it could save them time. I guess what would help me understand it better is how big of an issue is this? And this has been mentioned before, how many incidents are we having? I know we have the graffiti, and we had some other violence, things like that we just don't know about. So I think if I could understand that would be helpful. The other thing is I'd like to know where all these 5 cameras are going to be. It'd be cool to see a map, hey, we're thinking here.
Is that not on the bid?
It was. I didn't see it on the bid.
It was not on the bid.
Okay.
And then what's the other thing? I just also kind of wonder what other residents in the city of Rollingwood think about it. So that's just my 2
Well,
cents there.
the thinking is just to throw this out and see if it has legs, and see if there's motivation for it. I will say one thing that Chief Brady mentioned was that his policemen have to turn into the park, drive all the way back to the far back to make sure nobody's back there on their patrol. And if we could see the choke point, see the, you know, a car has entered or people have entered that spot, then that saves them a ton of time and allows them to patrol other areas that are maybe more crime ridden. I know we have a lot of people getting their cars broken into out in their driveways.
And that's what
been
he
a
said, it's a
serious
big-
problem.
yep.
And if we can divert the police more towards that direction and let them check their app on their phone and go, okay, nobody's in the park right now. I don't need to go away and go drive all the way back there. That's kind of the thinking, is utilize technology to help prevent crime all over the neighborhood of Rollingwood, not just our park.
So on that note, may I interrupt?
Please.
In the prevent crime, you need to let the citizens of Rollingwood know that there are 10 cameras downstairs and 1 camera upstairs already.
Let's do it.
Because nobody knows this.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
yeah,
not
that's on the
notified, and
city.
I think what Melissa's saying, we have to tell people. We have to tell people that they're being recorded when they're at the park.
I have a
Because right now,
question.
they're not informed.
Sure.
Is the system that we're looking at, are these motion sensitive lights and cameras?
They're not lights because of the city restriction on evening lighting, especially in the park, just in relation to the neighbors and just wanting to provide, you know, that darkness
Are
for
they-
them.
Are they cameras?
But-
So they're very sensitive cameras?
They are, and then they are motion heat detected so that you will able to see the image even in the evening hours without it being illuminated, because there's no lights in the back gravel area. They would still be able to have the capability to pick up the image, as
So
well as
they
a
would-
license plate.
If it's, if they're taking images at night, they're probably not gonna be able to pick up facial features. They probably couldn't identify people with that, would be my guess. But they'll know if somebody's there, that's
I
kind of
think
the
the
purpose
technology
of-
is a little better than we know.
And we're happy to have,
Yeah.
you know, the representative from it's the current system that is already in the police department. And that's why we reached out to him
We reached
first,
out
is
to
because
that.
it's already existing here. And it made sense to have a like-minded, you know, company come in and give a quote to integrate it with the current system that's already in the police station. And happy to have him come as well to answer any specific questions, or maybe it's a city council thing that you'd like them to come, you know, to a city council meeting. We can put on that agenda. Again, it was just,
Is it a 24-hour monitoring? Is that the
Yes.
kind of system we're looking at?
it is, and it's motion activated.
And
And you
motion
can tell it
activated.
parameters. So like we know during 4 to 7 p.m. that 3, 4, and 5 are heavily used. So we're not going to necessarily say, okay, reward those 3 hours of usage because you have so many people that are motion censored. And so you can have parameters set up of when you want it on, when you don't. Again, I don't want to speak, that's out of my wheelhouse. We're just here to present the information, the opportunity to say, if y'all are interested, we could either set it up with city council and have Chief Brady as well as our IT contact come out and take the next step, or we can,
I think the intent was ways we can improve the park, and if there are, you know, graffiti problems happening and our police having to drive through the park, and technology can handle this at a nominal cost, that's what we're proposing.
well, and even just the amount of folks that come and use the playscapes, which is great, but then they leave their trash behind or they break something there. And so we're, as a city, having then to replace those items that get misused or, you know, fall apart. And it gives us an opportunity just to let other people know who are visiting our city. We want you here, but we also want you to know that we're asking you to do the right thing when you are in our city.
So that raises the question of, are we going to start prosecuting people for littering, for the occasional breakage of something, and for graffiti? Because that criminalizes a lot of kids. Is that worth doing as a park socially?
I don't think the intent is to take it to a
But what
But-
is
People are
the-
just
what
I
is
think
the
it's the
deterrent?
same
It's the
answer as-
deterrent.
I think
Right.
it's the same answer
It's
as
not-
if somebody saw some kid doing
Right.
that right now, would we prosecute them? It's no different that if we caught them on security camera. that-
Except it is, if it's on a security camera and it's in the hands of the police, they've got a kid doing something that is technically illegal,
They could
they
prosecute him.
could prosecute.
For sure.
If it's Joe says, Mark did this, Mom, and the police walk by and hear that, are they
Mhm.
gonna prosecute? No. Why would
But
they?
if they had
And is
a
it worth-
camera
and is it
phone,
worth it as a city?
if they had a camera phone and they were videoing a kid graffitiing our
Yeah,
restroom, it's the same issue, isn't it?
yeah, but I mean, seriously, if it's like, hey, I put my initials on, is the punishment prosecution or is the punishment?
I guess
I
the
think
question
that's
that
a whole
Socially,
nother-
I know,
think
but
that's
I
a
mean,
whole
as soon
other
as
No,
issue,
and
though,
I-
But
right?
as soon as you
I mean,
put
how
these
many
minor
homes have the ring
infractions in
cameras
front
in
of
front of their
police-
homes as a deterrent? And again, this isn't meant to be in replacement of the police officer doing his or her job or duty.
Mhm.
It's to protect one of our biggest assets that lots of people come to,
Right.
whether they're residents or not. And it allows us to communicate with people that we are concerned about safety and we are trying to protect what we have here. To me, that's what this intent was.
So,
It's
okay.
when UT baseball came and vandalized all of the batting cages. There are things that have happened. The fences, $30,000 we just used to put in the fences. So now if somebody's going to come and hop the fence and it's going to break down, then again, it's more of, we've taken a long time on this
Yeah, we have.
agenda item. So sorry.
No, that's all right. Do we want to make a motion, or do we want to table this for another discussion? I think we're,
I think it would
Just-
be helpful to have the police chief come
okay.
and just give us his spiel, because he didn't put anything in the packet or anything, so I don't really have a good sense of where he's coming. I do think also that there are gonna be other residents on both sides, they're gonna be passionate,
Sure.
and this came out on Friday night, so there's a lot of people who might be concerned about it, but can't make a plan for, I just don't think it's on people's radar. I think right now we can start with putting signs where we already have cameras, and that should help with some of what we're talking about in terms of preventing people from doing stuff. I would put one right in front of the bathroom, and all those places. I think we'll start getting some help. And have the police been able to use with the camera? How long have those cameras been in existence?
They are not, unfortunately. Chief Brady said it's been so long since they first had that installed that it's really not an active.
Okay, because I was wondering if he could just tell us how much has it helped them so far to have those cameras in
Mhm.
place. So even if you just replace the ones that they've been using.
He said that they're really not, because the way that they move from field to field, that they're just not an accurate, and it's only fields 1 and 2. It's not necessarily in the areas that he was most concerned with, where there's high volume of traffic.
It seems like it's just a deterrent
It
and you're
is.
not getting any data. from it.
Correct.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Based
But
on our
it can't be a
discussion.
deterrent
So
if
if we're
it's,
looking
if
at
it's not
signs, where does
signed.
that responsibility lie? I would imagine with the city or the police to put those up, that's not a park thing.
I mean, yes, I don't want to speak for the police department because I know that's kind of what they work on, the current cameras and stuff we had, but any signage, probably generally approved to some degree. Most signage that goes in the park has been approved through Park Commission and then City Council.
But it
I
doesn't
believe.
generate with us, like that's not something we need to do today, like how does that, I guess what I'm asking is what is the next step in order to get these signs up? If that's part of the deterrent and part of our legal responsibility, where does that go next?
I think that it would make sense to have those all go together if you're making this recommendation to council. If that's a requirement, I don't know if that's, where those requirements lie in notifying people about cameras, but
Maybe that's a question for the attorney that you could pose?
perhaps, or the police chief might have
Okay.
some more ideas. So maybe when he comes back, we can kind of rehash this and get his thoughts on it first, on where we should look for those kind of requirements.
So
There
does,
might be a one-pager, Nicole, if you call the camera place, because they're used to people having to deal with this. So you
Okay.
might just ask for the one-pager, hey, when I install these in a public place, what do I have to do?
Okay.
awesome. So any action on this one?
I think we come back next week or next month with what are our legal responsibilities. If you could tell us what next steps are for how we get a sign up once we do know what we need to do, and then talking with the police chief, having him here to answer questions, and then hopefully we can make a decision one way or the other on whatever our responsibility as a park commission is to take our step. I just hate to see us get all at least if we can know what we can do to move it forward or to take it off the table.
And I'd be happy to get some general legal, just kind of starting that conversation, but until they're approved and actually something that we're going to do going forward, I wouldn't want to get
But
an
we already have
opinion.
a
But they're
camera.
existing cameras.
We're talking
Sure.
about
Should
the
have that
existing one.
special-
Sure,
'cause
yeah,
what
I'm
if-
happy-
What if we
That
have that
signage should
camera
already
and
be
we
up.
tell people?
Got
and
it.
The deterrent app
Yes,
helps.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Of course, I totally understand. I believe we have some signage up there, do we not, that there's a camera, or is there none? Maybe it's because that one was a test. I feel like I've maybe seen them down here.
Yeah,
Okay.
they would need to be much more prominent because.
It might be the vendor that put up
I don't
that
think so.
camera could provide signs. I mean,
Sure.
Sure, I'm sure that's an easy
If they're
sign
legally
to-
required, that should be
get.
part of their responsibility to,
Sure.
If you Google them
Done.
on Amazon or whatever, they'll send you, they have pre-made signs you can get in of
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
color you want, and it just basically says you're being monitored.
Yeah, I mean, you see them everywhere. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything here, though. I've never seen anything around the city.
All right. So if we're not going to take any action on that one,
Alex got a comment.
Sorry, one last thing. If the recommendation is to move forward with this, it's like next month or whatever. Like, I do think what Ashley had mentioned earlier is the best approach. Just let's figure out what it costs and do it in the budget cycle for next year. So,
And the
Got
budget
it.
cycle would have to be given to council, in order to meet the budget cycle, we would need to submit it to council by July? Cause it's September, is that budget, September to September?
We generally set the, it starts in October. October 1 is the date. They usually adopt in September. They'd probably like to see it a couple months earlier as they're doing all their budget workshops. So I would say like May or June, July probably would be the best. So
Okay.
gives us a couple more meetings to finalize that.
Well, June's next month.
Yeah.
all right. So no action on that one. For now, we're tabling it. The next two agenda items are items I added, and they had to do with being a little more proactive as a park commission and getting more done. I feel like we're meeting monthly and not getting a lot of results from these meetings. So my thought was to throw these two items on the agenda and see if there was any interest in moving forward. I'll start with number 5, and as Melissa accurately pointed out to me this morning, I have a little bit of a conflict of interest because I'm on the Western Hills Little League board, as everybody knows, and I used to be the president and everything like that. I know that they've had discussions about putting artificial turf on Hatley 1, just preliminary. We have had fantastic results with Joseph Field at WAYA, which Melissa's very familiar with. We don't have the monies budgeted. We don't have any current plans, but I wanted to feel it out as to whether or not we would be in favor of allowing that by Western Hills if they were going to budget it, and whether or not we thought that would help our park or harm our park. I took the liberty of taking a picture of Joseph Field as it exists right now, and then took a picture of Hatley in its current state, and wanted to show that to everybody. So that's a picture of the Joseph Field. This weekend they had a game going on right after a pretty heavy rain, and that's what the field looked like. It looked fantastic. You have turf going all the way out to almost to the middle of the outfield, and then grass out in the outfield.
The turf would replace the dirt infield?
Correct. So it's a costly initiative. So before I even start trying to get Western Hills to think about it, I wanted to know if that was something we'd be interested in. It looks a lot better. That's the same vantage point of Hatley 1 this morning. You can see, I mean, there's spots in the grass where, you know, you got flooding, you got spots where it doesn't grow, you've got, you know, weeds, you've got a mound that doesn't look exactly perfect. You can see where they've taken turf mats and put them out by home plate because those Batters boxes, anytime it rains, you get big holes developing there. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've had turf out at Joseph, and it looks phenomenal always. Optically, it plays better for the kids. We don't have any rainouts unless there's lightning going on during a game, and it allows much more use, not just for baseball and softball, but for other uses as well. If it's raining and somebody wants to go out and do yoga on the grass or on the turf, they can, whereas they can't do it anywhere else right after a big heavy rain. And just driving by, I can say it looks 1,000 times better. So the question to everyone is, if Western Hills wanted to go forward with that and try to put turf or raise money or whatever, would we be in favor of it? And the other thing I wanted to point out, if you can, Ashley, show Joseph one more time. One of the big ways we got that funded was there's a Horizon Bank sign just behind home plate there. And it's not, gaudy or anything like that, but by doing that, it's a lot easier to fund something like that. So the kind of secondary question is if we're in favor of doing something like this or allowing Western Hills to do it, or if the RCDC wants to do it or anybody else, would we be in favor of it, and would we be okay with putting tasteful advertising like that on it? So that's my question to the Parks Commission. We didn't have a lot on our agenda this month, so I added this in the next item to see if we could actually take some action and, maybe state an opinion on whether or not we were for or against this.
Vicki, how much does this take off your plate if we turf it?
A lot.
Then I'm for it, because I got a list for Vicki.
And it looks, because it's not just the weeds and cutting it, it's the dirt maintenance, ants, all of it. It does take a lot off, and like the rocks and all. It is a lot.
We had an incident earlier on this season where the sprinklers went off Friday night or Saturday morning, and we had 8 games planned for the next day, and I was reaching out trying to find who I could get in touch with, at least to make sure it didn't happen again. And so this is a big time suck for Vicki, I know, and for everybody, and this solves that.
And it takes a lot of maintenance and water off of our
It
list.
takes a lot of water, and we do have a lot of water problems here. I didn't know if you noticed that. So irrigation included. So those are something to consider.
Yeah.
Well, and I think of it from a safety perspective. If the ground is uneven, if the dirt isn't level, the injuries that the athletes could suffer when you turf something like this, it would appear that you'd have field stability, leveling, and you wouldn't have the potential potholes or the divots or fill in the blank with, someone's going back for.
Yeah, we have 7 or 8 year old kids out there that are fielding ground balls that there's a big lip on the infield, and it hits and has a bad hop, and it hits them in the eye, and all of a sudden, not only do they not want to play baseball next year, they don't want to go to school the next day. They're embarrassed because they have a black eye and a bloody nose and blah blah blah. So.
Well, and another thing it does is this problem with the weeds. I get it. We could returf and it would look great. The weeds are going to come back unless, to prevent that, even you would have to sanitize your mowers before you even move them to the next field. Cleaning of shoes, things like that. It's going to track back any way you put it. And returfing or not, and you could stay on top of it with the herbicides and the different things. And Melissa knows all about this, but it is long-term cost effective to do something like this. So yeah.
And would this be a maintenance thing that Western Hills Little League and girls softball would keep up with? Because the pellets, for lack of better words, those have to be resurfaced, and there's maintenance even with turf.
Yeah, I think it's something we could work out pretty easily. It takes our maintenance bill and reduces it 10 times.
Really?
How
Yeah.
much is it ballpark to do this? I mean,
I was trying to reach out to people before I even brought it up, but I think it's probably 150,000 to 200,000.
I think 350.
Lower.
Lower?
Lower?
No.
If you're just doing the infield, it's probably closer to, I think you could do it for 70,
I would do it tomorrow for
Yeah.
70.
yeah.
If
So
we could.
I,
I know we could raise that much money.
yeah,
It enhances the park, it enhances the baseball or softball. I think they would do both fields if they could at that number. And I think it just makes the park look so much better. I
Yeah.
mean, driving by it after a big rain and you see, big puddles everywhere and everything like that, so.
I'm gonna ask something about the elephant in the room. What happens when are dogs gonna tear it up? How are you gonna keep dogs off of it?
Well, dogs aren't supposed to be on field one as it is. So, I mean, if they're out there, they're out there. But in my mind, it's even better if, if there is a dog out there, because they don't dig up dirt and create an unsafe atmosphere for the kids.
Okay.
So,
What did you mean by the other field? For that amount, you said
Two.
75.
oh,
Field two.
if girls softball wanted to do their field two,
But don't they don't need dirt in field?
they don't.
I mean,
No.
the high school went to turf.
High school went to turf.
Yep.
Cut down on,
There are other fields around town that went to turf. It's kind of a no-brainer if you can afford
I
it.
mean, most of the high schools now, if they're doing fields, they're going turf because it cuts out on rainouts and
Right.
maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, when we can have 8 or 10 fields after a Friday, or 8 or 10 games on a Saturday after a Friday night rain and not have to rework our entire schedule, it makes a huge difference. And everybody's happy.
so
So-
and that's what I was gonna speak to. I can tell you, again, I don't manage the Joseph one other than just seeing it. Western Hillsville League takes care of it, so they can tell you more about the cost of it. Because they do on a quarterly basis replace the little pellets.
Mhm.
They have a little thing that comes in and actually churns them and then replaces them in there. It makes it so literally, unless it's lightning and thundering, you can play on those fields. Cause the outfield usually stays, the grass is not too
Mhm.
overrun. But it makes it, you can get more games in because you're not having to rake every 2 games. You don't have to rebuild the mound. You don't have to maintain those lips. All of those things that Vicky just mentioned, it is truly like a magic. The only downside is it is hotter. Now, that doesn't really impact spring and fall. Like, I don't think it will affect the baseball or softball programs. Although you do have to remind people, like, when we get those funky days where all of a sudden it's 100 degrees in May, you need to tell kids, because it's literally
You'll burn your
10
feet.
to 15 degrees
Yeah.
hotter on those things.
Mhm.
But I love, again, we've had our gymnastics groups come out and pull their mats onto there, because you don't have ants on it, you don't have mud on it.
Mhm.
We've had karate groups use those. So for me, I can say that one of the requirements would be that it remains a public space. It's not locked up to, the non-25 weeks of the year that baseball isn't using it. That it really has to be open to the public. But that, again, when we talk about having cameras, et cetera, because kids do, again, stupid things. The places that you see wear and tear are usually the pitcher's mound and the home plate, and just from natural usage.
Mhm.
But you can save and just replace that piece of turf like every 5 years.
I actually did that this weekend at Joseph. We ripped up a 4x6 piece of turf off of the pitcher's mound and replaced it with a brand new piece of turf, and it was brand new again.
Yeah.
And that's the spot that gets all the use. So,
So the pitcher's mound's turf too, was dirt?
yeah, it's turf.
Mhm.
Oh, it's just color.
It's just
Correct.
different
Yeah.
color.
Yeah, it's turf. So, I guess what I would like is, and as a point of order, do I need to abstain myself from voting on anything?
Yes.
I would
yeah,
think so.
Great.
So I don't,
But the your responsibility
Steve's
to vote.
nodding his head.
yeah, so, I mean,
sit on a lot of boards.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not a lot of boards, I go to a lot of private boards, and, if you have a conflict of interest, you shouldn't be.
Yeah. So, if anybody wants to make a motion on this and
I'll
see
make a
if we
motion.
should pursue it and possibly let the Little League know that they're allowed to do this, or, if everything's reasonable, we quasi-support it, I don't know.
I'm in favor of taking the next step to see if it's something we should do.
Okay.
So is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Can I make a comment here?
We need a second before we
Okay.
discuss.
Yes.
I second.
I hear all the good for baseball, good for maintenance. Part of me sees this park as our precious city park, and baseball more or less owns it half the year. And as baseball uses the park grounds, it makes it not unavailable, but it makes it less attractive to the community to use it as parkland. And so I just kind of, part of me just reflexively opposes the idea, because you don't find turf at Zilker Park, for example. It's a big open grass and weeds and potholes and you name it. But it's a beautiful, wonderful park. And I'm sort of asking myself, is it possible we could figure out a way to keep that as a grassy field, commit to the idea that this is the city of Rollingwood's precious community park that we share with baseball. It's like once we turf that, it's turf, and I don't know if it would reduce the attractiveness to the community as a park. My thoughts.
I do want to say that we signed a 10-year lease with baseball, and assuming that they follow through on that. The life of these turf fields is about 8 to 10 years in Texas because of the heat and the wear and tear on it. So I feel that we're in the right timeline for doing a project like this with Western Hills Little League. We're only talking about one field. We're not talking about, these are my pros and cons in my mind. We're talking about one field at this point, and it's sort of the premier field of all of them. I appreciated them saying, at least, I didn't hear Western Hills Little League representative say no dogs ever on that, because I know one of my concerns was that if we do try to even just reseed and resod and give a rest to the 3, 4, and 5, that I want to give dog owners the ability to use the outfield on 1 and 2 just during that transition period. And then, like I said, get them back on 3, 4, and 5. So I don't see just doing the infield as being a forever. I think you're going to be shocked how beautiful it looks and how much it really will help the staff not have to do so much. And it may even take some of those games off 3, 4, and 5 and put them over onto 1 because they can get more of those games. And let me tell you, no kid who's played on 1 is ever going to want to play on 3, 4, and 5 because it's so flat. It's the kids nowadays. I mean, my kids have now grown up at Hill Country, etc., and they don't want to run on real grass. I mean, that sounds crazy because they get tripped because there's clumps of grass and there's holes and there's other things. And so anyway, that's just I see.
I'm
this
used to
as
playing
just,
in potholed.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I'm at least comfortable with us seeing how much it'll cost. I don't think the city should put a penny into it. I really do think it should come from Western Hills Little League, and I think they can do it. I really believe that they have the families, et cetera, that could back that up, and I think that it should remain an open space when baseball is not happening. So for those 3 reasons, I feel pretty comfortable. But I'm not trying to argue with you, Don. I'm just kind of showing where I stand.
Do you, I'm kind of abstaining from this one,
Yeah,
so.
but we
So,
still need,
so the
we still
actual
need, we have
motion
a,
is to.
the motion is to take the next step, to do our due diligence, to see if this is a viable action. That was my motion.
So you're giving authorization to Western Hills Little League and Girls Softball, if they are interested in artificial turfing,
To come
Field
to
one.
us with.
to come to us with the
like,
next
with the
steps would be.
proposal.
Yes.
So we're
with the
agreeable to that.
proposal.
Yeah, because there, again, that's a big thing, and there are gonna be people on either side that are gonna wanna come and speak
Mhm.
to it, and so, you know, I think.
Prepare yourself.
All right, do we want to put that motion to a vote? We got one more thing to hit before 1 o'clock.
We have a 1 and 2
Oh.
motion, so it's, everybody needs to vote.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll be the chair, standing in for you for 1 minute, so all in favor say aye.
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 I'm willing to
Any
listen.
opposed? One opposed.
Opposed.
Is Mary?
No, she's not
Okay.
on.
Okay, all right, so the
Awesome.
motion passes.
All right,
Okay, we
You're
did
back in
something
charge,
today.
Chad.
we did do something. All right, next one up, discussion regarding park expansion to the north of the swim facility. So this is something I've noticed a couple times in doing our walkthroughs of the park. I've talked to several of y'all about this. There's an area to the north of the swim facility where if you go downhill a little bit, it kind of widens out. And I was going through the park master plan, and this is what the park master plan calls the expansion, lower expansion of the dog park. But what I would like to do is to open that area up and see what it would cost preliminarily to make it safe to get down there, to clear out the undergrowth, to clear out the trashy trees, and make that an area where people could actually walk and see if it gets used. Because to me, it's of no use right now, and it could be really nice. And whether what we use it for eventually is anyone's guess.
It's a
But
buffer.
it's-
Really, it just serves as a buffer, that's what it does.
Right, it's
So-
also a watershed,
yeah,
so we'd have to be careful about disrupting soil.
absolutely.
So-
And my thought was, if we could clear that out and see what we've got and see if that's worth utilizing for anything, whether that be an area where people could read books or walk down and maybe if the baseball fields are being used and they don't want to be around a bunch of kids, they could go down there and isolate. We could put park benches, put whatever. To me, I would like to get someone to go down there and tell me, okay, it would cost this to remove everything but these 17 oak trees that are beautiful, and we could throw down grass seed, and we could put stairs down from the parking lot to make it safe, and a wheelchair ramp over here if we need it. But this is what it would cost, and then throw that in front of the city council. But again, this was one of those things that people have been talking about for years. It was part of our master plan. Nothing's ever been done. We didn't have anything on our agenda, so I'm throwing it out there. I would like to explore what that would look like and see if that would help our park. If it could add whatever it is, I think, Ashley, give that part of the, and you're better at this, or else I'd just walk up there and do it. But this is what I'm talking about. That dark gray, 4,045 square feet over there, and it may be bigger or it may be smaller.
Does it
But-
come all the way to the bottom right of the screen? Is it, the part that I've walked it's, if you keep moving to the right, Ashley. Okay. There's a, it's fairly heavily wooded back there, and there's a.
Yeah, but right here, there's some rocks. See, this is where I But, I mean, any of this that we could clear and just see what we have there and see if it was a nice spot to walk down and get a little break or to somehow utilize, because it's not getting utilized now. And we'd be conscious of watershed, we'd be conscious of everything we need to be conscious of. But by walking down there and having an area cleared out enough to where we could walk and we could, you know, whether sit on a park bench, but it'd be shaded area, which we don't have right now in the park, and an area where you could, if we could make it safe to, you know, park right here and then decide, okay, there's too many people out here, I'm gonna walk down here to this spot and have it be cleared out and nice pretty oaks and grass or whatever. I'm not trying to add to our maintenance obligation, but just if we could get a bid to see what that would cost and see if it was worth pursuing for us and see if people wanted it. That's what I'm asking for, and I'm not conflicted on this one. So I could bring a motion that we explore what that costs and maybe get a bid, and if anybody has any ideas on, I think that I would love some brainstorming here. I think that would be an awesome spot for a t-ball field, or that would be an awesome spot for a library, or that would be an awesome spot for whatever.
I think
A hammock park where
think
people
as
could
a-
hang hammocks and
an
go.
adult area, and
An
anybody
adult
can go
area.
there, but a place that's shaded, I think you'd wanna leave as much, visual barrier
Yeah.
between that area and the houses on the other side of it.
How many
Here-
property owners does this impact? So there's
That would be Shapiro's, it would be, Aparna, and it would be, I'm trying to think, who's on the other side of Shapiro?
But I mean, in my mind, I mean, honestly, so you probably saw in front of Wea, we did some clearing. And it is amazing, you can see through it, and you can bring the trees up and you make
For
them
the
healthier.
volleyball?
No, right at the front, when you drive
Oh,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, and what we did was we just started
Yeah.
with, like, we were like, okay, we've got $5,000. How much can you do for 5,000? And then we've been kind of adding in sections.
That's
but-
kind of my idea, is just to clear it up
That's
and
what I would
clean it
wanna
up a
know.
little bit and see what we have there.
Yeah, but you can kind of ask them, say, hey, how much can I, if you did just this amount, if you did just this amount, if you,
Yeah.
just kind of have them tell you, and then they can say, here's how much we can clear, we
Yeah.
understand you still wanna have a buffer,
Mhm.
and we're not trying to make it handicapped accessible at this point, I don't think, I mean, it's more,
Just
because
trying
that.
maybe it makes, it eases congestion for handicapped people on the regular park and,
Yeah,
whatever. It was just a thought that every time I walk by there and I glance through those trees, I'm like, that would be a pretty cool spot if
Yeah.
somebody would actually do something there.
yeah.
So here's my 2 cents. I love the idea of utilizing the space we have and expanding, but one of the things that I came onto this board 2 years ago with was, I really don't feel like we can add anything to the park until we're maintaining what we currently have. And I will tell you that Melissa and I just went on a park walkthrough this month, and this is not to be disparaging to Vicky at all, because she works her tail off and there's more than she can handle, and this is not at all, but there are things on my park walkthrough that I'm seeing from a year ago. I just cannot get on board with doing anything until we're taking care of what we currently have, and that's my position. We've gone several different ways with maintenance on the park commission in the city, and we haven't found the right thing that works best. But Vicky and her 1 or 2 person crew can't take care of everything that's required of a public works department, plus beautification and maintenance of a park. Unfortunately, we don't do a good job of holding our vendors accountable, so that didn't work for us either. So I really don't know what that is, but in my mind, we can't keep adding to the park if we're not taking care of what we have.
On that note, since there's budgeting coming up, should we not request perhaps money for further maintenance people? Another public works employee, or
Well, I
somebody
think,
to take over at least partial landscaping duties perhaps?
I think that would be great, but I don't know how all that works, and I do know we're at a staffing shortage as it is.
Right.
I don't know who and what we need in order to do what we need to do. But that was one of the things that I, in our park walkthrough, had mentioned was, I don't think we should be doing monthly walkthroughs. There's too much that is repetitive each month because it doesn't get done, and maybe we need to go to quarterlies, and give them time to make some progress. But I don't know what the right answer is, but that's my 2 cents on
I
doing something
completely
more with the
understand
park.
your position about us not maintaining the park to the level you'd like. If that's a concern, let's put an agenda item on there and discuss it next month. That's why I'm adding agenda items, is because I want y'all to tell me what we can do to the park and be proactive about it and make it better.
I got a list.
So-
I got a list.
Well, put an agenda item next week, reach out, and that way maybe we won't have 4 regular agenda items next week. Maybe we'll have 8 and we can discuss
Well,
some
funding
meaningful
funding is a
things.
really big deal.
Yeah.
And there's some 80,000 a year cost M&O for the park, and there's some restrictions on how certain monies can be spent, and there's options. But since I've been on the park commission, we haven't really looked hard at those. I don't even know how the park is funded. I guess it's just comes out of the general funds and pay it as we go. But yeah, I went on a walkthrough with Mary Elizabeth, I guess a couple months ago, and Vicki went with us. And, you know, I just imagine myself trying to take on this much
That's a lot.
weeding and trimming
Yeah.
and cleaning up and all of that stuff, and it's kind of overwhelming to look at. I mean, it's something you need
Full-time person dedicated.
you need
to
Yeah.
somebody, and as Melissa's pointed out, it needs to be a company with a lot of equipment and backup people so they can hit it every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it needs.
So
I
Don, we did have Cleanscapes was our company when I first came on board, but the problem was there was no accountability, there wasn't enough staff to say, hey guys, you didn't do this month, or you didn't do
Yeah.
this month, or hey, you didn't even show up this month. There was
So
no
yeah.
accountability. So that is why we brought everything back in-house and started these park walkthroughs again and kind of redefined how we were maintaining the park. But it's way too much for Vicki and one person. So what is the happy medium? I don't know, but we've got to define something different.
One thing, I agree with you totally. I think next meeting, we should without question plan on talking about funding. I've got some ideas. They're probably controversial and will piss off half the neighborhood, but
You're going to donate a bunch of money.
for example. But also on the park walkthroughs, I think the best thing we could do with the park walkthrough is to, when we do one, to write up a little, just what you see and what you think, and send it to Ashley and let her distribute it.
That's what's, we could distribute it.
I
I think we
That's
were
what's
supposed.
being done.
I think we were supposed
In
to do our
fact,
top
I came
3.
back after and walked it with Vicki, just she and I, to point out where the concerns were. So, you know, it's not a lack of not knowing what the issues is, it's a lack of manpower.
Yeah.
It's a lack of hours in a day.
Yeah.
Those are our things. We all know we had a list a mile long. We narrowed it
Yeah.
down to our top 3, which were on my list from a year and a half ago. It's just a lot. And then, you know, if you're talking about drainage and down in the lower park where things don't grow and what to do with that, there's a lot of conflicting views and who has the final say.
Yeah,
So that's where we get bogged down, and that's where we're not making progress.
I think we should put that on next week's agenda for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be on today's, but it wasn't. I'll make sure it gets on next month.
Awesome. Well, if we can add it to next month's agenda, we will definitely discuss it. In the meantime, I would like to make a motion that we maybe form a subcommittee to talk about this park expansion to the north of the swim facility, see what it would cost, see what we could do for X amount of dollars, and make a proposal at our next meeting regarding that.
I'll
So,
work with you. Are you interested in doing that?
I am.
I'll work with you on that,
okay, that'd be great.
unless somebody else wants to. I mean,
How many do we need on a subcommittee?
No.
Up to 3.
Up to
Maximum
3?
three.
Is there anybody else that wants to be on that committee?
Sure.
Jennifer? Okay. All right. Well, make a motion to form a subcommittee to explore this, to see if it's got legs, and to come to our next meeting and have a bid from someone to clear it out and make it more useful. I'm not talking about finalizing anything or
Getting it into proposal.
you know, any formal,
Yeah.
this is now the blank center for the park or anything like that, but just to, I think it would be cool to open it up, make it more usable, make it safe to get down to it, and then see what happens. And see who wants to use it for what, and see if somebody takes the initiative to do that. So, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that one?
I oppose.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody in opposition, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. And we are adjourned at